Hello, Colin Harrison here. In the beginning, on the afternoon of Saturday, the 21st of March, 2020, I was thinking about how to save the planet, the way one does. And I came across the chart that changed the world, as it became known, in that week's edition of The Economist magazine. Now, that chart, which is based on models developed at Imperial College, London, shows successive waves of infection in the UK, quickly and repeatedly overwhelming the capacity of the NHS emergency rooms. Now, up to that moment, the pandemic, which had only been officially so designated 3 weeks before by the World Health Organization, had seemed like a rather bad flu season, nothing terribly bad to worry about. But the chart showed something radically different. These repeated global waves of infection for which we had no treatment. The image that came to mind was of a carefully assembled 1,000-piece jigsaw puzzle representing our global humanity that was being thrown up in the air and having its pieces scattered to the winds. But a question that swiftly followed in my mind was, well, if the old configuration is going to be disrupted, could that be an opportunity to build a new configuration? One that would respect the limits of our planet and humanity and offer greater equality among all peoples. A pivot in a better direction. So, carpe diem, I reached out immediately for my network.
I'm Peter Head. I got Colin's email on that Saturday with his proposal, and I'd already actually agreed with my family that my wife and I would lock down and shield here in London because of our worries about COVID. And a lot of news was spreading very quickly here. I had already decided that this pandemic would probably change everything all over the world and would severely disrupt society. And as someone who's worked very hard on trying to help the world deal with the climate change and ecological destruction crises, we now had 3 crises coming together. And I thought maybe it's just possible, as Colin thought, that the pandemic would actually trigger a change in attitude, and people might want to live more in harmony with nature, might not want to go back to pollution. And maybe we might just help people to change in a new direction. So I went back to him straight away and said, wow, this is a really great idea. Let's see if we can attract some volunteers and move something forward. And as soon as I went back, we agreed that we really needed a work plan. So I said that I would write a work plan because my charity, which I founded, which is called Resilience Brokers, which I now chair, has actually created something called Roadmap 2030, which is a plan of action for collaborative working of multidisciplinary practices to actually come together in city regions and help people to make change happen. And that roadmap had some ideas about how to do that. So when Colin said we need a work plan, I said, well, maybe I can use that document and some of my experience in planning cities and come up with a work plan for the period between March and November 2020, when COP26 was still planned to happen in the UK. Maybe we could make a difference over that period. So actually by Tuesday, the following week, I had written this plan and we'd put it onto a shared document on the web. So anyone who was interested could actually add to it and change it. And within about 2 weeks, we had 70 people signed up to support the program, and we're starting to shape it on this online document with 20 work streams identified and the idea of finding some demonstration regions. And I then reached out to my social media and other networks and to mobilize people. And one of the people I I went to was Nigel Topping, who was the special advisor to the COP26 program. And he came back straight away and said, this is really interesting. Why don't you contact Spark Beyond, who have an artificial intelligence machine that helps decision making, and maybe you might be able to work with them to help people tackle climate change more effectively. So basically, that's what we did.
So the first thing is respect. That strikes me as worth noting. The second thing is they both recognized very quickly that this changes everything, using Naomi Klein's terminology. And it was, as well as devastating and perhaps a foreshadowing, there was a necessity to make of it an opportunity. How they envisaged they were going to work, in a way, is beyond me, because what they did, they obviously both reached out to a few or more people that they knew and said, will you join us on this adventure? So perhaps I should say there's an adventure in it as well, thinking of it. And it seems to have rung chords. So those are all part of my gathering of thinking from the past. And I'd like to ask you, maybe you could do something similar.
Well, yes, I came across pivot projects because I'd been introduced to Peter by you. And there was just something about the timing on a particular day which said to me, this is the right time to join and find out. And I joined an organization, or an organism, I'd rather call it, where, as you say, Jeff, there was just so much respect, so much, imperative isn't the right word, but just so much intention, really. I think intention, so much knowledge, and such a breadth of experience and understanding, and an openness. And that's really where I started, because I joined quite some time after the beginning of pivot projects. And I found it hugely exciting and empowering and inclusive. To me, it presaged the concept of how we could be in the world. So for me, probably the first thing that came to me was the modeling that was already being done within the organism.
Ian Abbott-Donnelly here. What I'd like to do is just reflect on the experience over the last year and talk through one slide that explains the kind of game that we're playing within pivot projects. So this is the slide that I think summarizes it. So our challenge is to make big, important decisions, policy changes, or pivots in the way the world works. No small challenge. And the game we're playing is a combination of humans and machine, something we call augmented intelligence. So it's our insight, what's going on in our worldview, plus the insights of the Pivot Projects team, plus AI, plus the collective intelligence of everything that is out there on the web, the publications, the data, the news, the Wikipedia, the patents. And we're trying to reveal really useful chunks of evidence. Our aim is to improve the way the world works, through improving the way we see the world at pace, with depth and with breadth. Basing our decisions on understanding a systemic whole system view of the way the world works and the relations between many complex things. A grand challenge, but I think worth it. Thank you.
I'd like to see Pivot projects draw together not only the knowledge and experience from all sorts of other organisations, but the organisations themselves, creating a hub of partnerships for both mutual learning, support and action. And I'd like to see Pivot projects embed this model into communities the world over, creating the framework for holistic change making.
Can you just spell out a little more the modelling that you saw within the organism?
Well, I think we're very used to hierarchical structures in business, in governance and everywhere. And there was very little of it. There was inevitably a little bit, because we need a little bit of a framework within which to operate. But I came without a strong academic background. I came without any recent history in working within any organization, but I was welcomed, and not only welcomed, but was enabled to find a place and to feel that I was contributing. And to me, that's such an important part of modeling. If we cannot do that within Pivot projects and demonstrate that we're doing that, that's such an important way of being in the world. So that's what really excited me.
Pivot Project has created something that is not written down anywhere, and it is not because it was designed in any specific way or through any planning effort, but it creates a space, and a space that is held by everybody without them necessarily consciously knowing it, or knowing it without putting words to it, that enables the free flow of ideas and exchange. And that's magical.
So I now can move forward with attention. You said intention, and I immediately picked up tension in my body. I think that there are two tensions that I'm experiencing and feeling. One is a tension inherent in Pivot projects, and tension and conflict is both inevitable and not necessarily damaging or disabling. But there is a tension between, on the one hand, the more technical, technological, scientific, data-driven, output-driven, outcomes-driven. Then, on another level, the present, the sometimes called humanities, arts, culture, education, community, faith especially, where we need to pay attention to where we are. That's really a tension. We're both absolutely aware of the urgency, but how we characterize and live in it and allow emergence, which is very different, I think, from outcome orientated. I think there's a sense of need to foster a depth of emergence. And I think there's one other thing to say. You mentioned structure, organization, hierarchy, and the necessity of it on one level, and it was inclusive, and there wasn't a great deal of it. And at the same time, there is, for me, that's always been a little bit, there's always been a sense of chaos there. And chaos rather than complexity, or complexity and contradictions and so on. It's in that there is potential for wonder and for the unexpected, but getting it right is very, very, very hard. So those are the two things I'm thinking now.
Hi, my name's Judy Neal, and I'm the president of Edgewalkers International, a consulting firm about workplace spirituality. I joined Pivot Projects back in September of 2020 because I was really concerned about all the very difficult things going on in the world, particularly with COVID-19 and the autocratic leaders in so many countries, all in the background of climate change, which everybody seemed to be forgetting about at that point. And what I found when I became a part of Pivot Projects was a group of passionate, talented, committed people who may not know exactly what it is we can do together, but want to take the steps to really make a large-scale transformational difference. And over the past few months, I have seen that move into more concrete action, into specific projects, and it's been a very, very exciting time. Something's going on here that feels very important and very impactful, and I'm hanging out to figure out what that's going to be.
My name is Gamehle Sibanda, or just Gama for short. My role in Pivot Projects is to coordinate engagements with what we call living labs and test beds. As we started to talk to demonstration regions about them becoming living labs for exploring change and then potential test beds for demonstration, we listened and learned about new global priorities emerging after COVID-19. A big theme has been the emergence of a flourishing society underpinned by living more in harmony with nature. In Delhi, India, the master planning team said that during the COVID lockdown, the skies cleared and people did not want to go back to the pollution and poor health. New electric transport was a priority. Poor communities in Oaxaca, Mexico, we're looking for improved sanitation and renewable energy in village microgrids. The city of Exeter in the UK was looking for more nature-based solution, green infrastructure, combined with better local flood management as part of a net zero emissions transition. They also wanted to tackle the retail crisis caused by a move to online shopping and the huge reduction in demand for office use in the city center. In Nepal and Democratic Republic of Congo, young people were leading a drive towards using permaculture and regenerative agriculture to improve yields from their soils, including soils in urban areas. In the UK, a large group of architects declared that they would only now work on buildings that largely created and stored their own energy and were part of new decentralized microgrids. This movement is now spreading worldwide. In Brazil, TNC were focused on reforestation and agroforestry to improve living conditions and soil productivity in regions where deforestation had taken place previously for soy production. In Fayetteville, in the USA, we are discussing the use of new regenerative economic thinking based on cellular economics to value community-driven recovery. In Montreal, in Canada, our conversation with McGill University informed us about a desire to roll out a sustainability course that may be taken by all students, possibly becoming mandatory eventually. Now, that could be a masterstroke move.
My name is Kai Greenlees, and I'm an MRes student in Sustainable Futures at the University of Exeter. And I joined Pivot Projects this past January, so just a couple of months now. Peter Head actually came and talked to us about what Pivot Projects is doing, and he showed us this huge Kumu systems model map. And I was just so blown away by seeing this visual representation of systems and the complexities embedded in them, and was really excited by the work everybody has been doing since the start of COVID. Yes, I want in. And so I joined the Exeter Living Lab and have been working with them for the past couple of months. But I brought up to them early on that I didn't see any individual psychological processes embedded in the model. And I was wondering why this was, because, you know, at the end of the day, these like grand, wicked challenges that we're facing, like COVID-19 and climate change, are the result of human behavior, which of course are related to our psychologies, our worldviews, our values and belief systems. And I voiced this to the team and they were on board with it, which I was shocked about. I felt so heard and really supported by the team. And we've actually ended up producing a new work stream to look at this further. And so it's just been an incredible environment to learn from people who have had so much experience in their fields, and feel supported and heard in how I'm beginning to set out in my own explorations.
As a young person, what better place to be? It's amazing for me to just sponge. I mean, everyone has all these amazing ideas and all this knowledge, and I'm fortunate enough to, like, I mean, through school and through work, maybe apply some of these things that I've learned.
My favorite concept in everything that I've seen in the last pretty much 12 months now of pivot projects is Wetico.
Ah, right.
It is. And your Eskimo story is the exact same thing. Yeah. This is what we need. Why are you so stupid that you need all this other crap to make things happen? And that, if one image contrasts with my whole contribution to consumerism, that's the one. That's the one that bursts the bubble for me, and I really appreciate that. It has been life-changing for me, and I really appreciate it. Thank you.
Oh, you're more than welcome.
Hi, I'm Steve Hamm, and I've been involved in Pivot projects since last April. Since the beginning of Pivot over the past year, there have been a lot of touching and inspiring moments. I remember things like the day that Damien described the hardships that his ancestors faced during the Irish famine. And I remember Stephen Passmore telling us that he couldn't write a poem. He'd never written a poem, and then he wrote one and read it to us, and it was beautiful. And I remember Shulamit writing a song or making up a song right in the middle of a meeting and then singing it to us. And also Jeffrey Newman. Almost everything Jeffrey said I found inspirational. But the most inspirational experience I had was actually the first meeting I ever attended, which was one of the first meetings of the Faiths group. And at that meeting, a guy named Abraham Soetendorp, who's a friend of Jeffrey's and is a rabbi in the Netherlands, really spoke to us very inspiringly, almost like a benediction. And he said during that first meeting that, you know, the effort or the struggle to make the world more sustainable and resilient was going to be very hard, and that our group effort was really noble, and that no matter what happened, we should never give up, that we should just keep trying.
And you've raised another element of the networking with other organizations. I wonder whether, harking back to an earlier conversation I think that you and I had, whether that begins with debriefing in a way that we don't even know how to begin to do, but probably has something to do with a change in the way that the all hands meetings work, debriefing and listening to and enlarging our depth of understanding of one another. We have on Pivot projects such wonderful global diversity, age diversity. Every element is present, but we're not at the moment, I think, fully being able to incorporate, bring it to the surface, and treasure it. It's even more than that. It's grow it. I think it's enable it. It's helping it to flourish, because I think the networking will come out of every person who is already networked in so many ways and already know all these other organizations. Miraculous it is. But there are only 6 degrees of separation, and we will transcend the world.
Yeah, it's definitely the collective intention. What we're talking about matters. It matters. Good is going to come of it, for sure. In one form or another, there will be positive outcomes. People will be helped from these conversations. I can feel that I'm affecting change that I want to see in the world, even though I may not see it through to manifest.